What's the weirdest, scariest thing you've ever seen when at somebody else's house? I was about 10 and staying with a friend. We were completely asleep when her mom and dad came in and woke us up and calmly said we were all going outside now. It was summer, so it wasn't too cold or anything. We all went outside, her 3 older teenage siblings and her parents and the 2 of us, but it was the middle of the night, so it was extremely strange. Then the bomb squad showed up. Turns out, there was a grenade with a pin still in it from WWII in their garage. My friend's dad would stay up super late cleaning and organizing his late father's belongings when he came across it one night. My parents ended up coming to pick me up a short time later and the bomb squad took the grenade, I believe. A few years back, my friend would often house sit for this family at her church. She always asked me to stay with her there because I didn't like the house, as the house had 350 some clowns in it. We always slept in the living room because all of the bedrooms had giant clown figurines. It was awful. My wife and I were touring a home we were considering buying. Old, vacant a while, fixer-upper, but lots of potential. Couldn't get around a smell that followed through the house. Got upstairs and the smell was worse. Opened up a bedroom door and there were strategically placed human turd piles all over the floor filling the room. Driest and oldest in the far corner. Relatively fresh closer to the door. We did not buy the house. My mom used to be a mental health advocate. Basically, she would take people with severe mental illnesses to and from doctor's appointments, court dates, bail them out when they got arrested, etc. Well, one of her clients would shit in his windowsill and let it dry, then smoke it like crack. He said it gave him the strength he needed to fight the demons at night. He was the same one who would climb on top of his 3-story apartment building during thunderstorms to stop the moon and sun from fighting. Because the angels told him that was his job. He was never a danger to anyone else and was actually very nice. Just severely schizophrenic. Topless velvet painting of my friend's mom. When I was 12 I had a friend that owned several hamsters. Always like 6+ at a time. The house smelled horrible. Anyway, I spent the night one night and got up to get water at around midnight. I opened the freezer to get ice and it was filled with hamster carcasses. Like almost 2 dozen. I practically threw up. I never brought it up and never spent the night again. She moved away a couple months later. Just stuck in there, or were they in bags? They were not in bags, just in there on the shelf. I was on a gymnastics team when I was 9 until 14 and went to a fellow team member's house to have a sleepover one Friday or Sat night. Her much older father played the organ the entire night as if we needed a musical soundtrack to our activities. Sometimes it was sad music but much of it was polka music and we ended up in the room with him doing the polka while he played. Super late, but I'll add mine to the mix. When I was about 12 I had a sleepover at a friend's house. Her aunt, uncle, and cousins were there for a visit as well. We kept to ourselves mostly, but when we went to bed my friend locked her bedroom door. When I asked her why, she said her little cousin sleepwalks and comes in sometimes at night and it was annoying. Okay, no big deal. That night I had a really hard time sleeping. I'm laying there wide awake around 2 AM and the doorknob turns. Whoever was on the other side tried again and rattled the doorknob a few times, then gave up. I figured it was the little cousin and eventually fell asleep. The next day the mom decides she should tell my mom that her brother, the uncle, was visiting because he'd just gotten out of jail for molesting a 10-year-old girl and they were looking for a new home. Needless to say, I never had a sleepover over there again. In my teens there was this girl whom I used to visit and hang out with a lot. Her dad was super cool, used to give us beers and shit. One day I show up and she was not there, said she would be back in about 30 minutes and I was free to hang out until she got back. Head into the living room, he tosses me a beer and sitting there on the couch chilling. Noticed he was working on a musical box, but I was kind of confused as I never seen wires in a musical box and was trying to see what he was doing. He also noticed I was looking and just casually mentioned that he was working on a bomb that some friend needed. First I thought he was joking, until I noticed the hollowed out shotgun shells next to it. He also decided that he should inform me he was colorblind too. Never been so scared in my entire life. So I'm 13. at a new school and walking home after school. A kid I didn't know kinda joins me and says after a few minutes, "Hey, here's my home. Wanna come in?" Yeah, okay. The house was the biggest mess I've ever seen. I guess 3 or 4 adults and 4 or 5 kids lived there and they never cleaned up. There was trash everywhere, paper bags, fast food containers, soda cups and bottles. My new friend asked if I wanted a glass of water and we went into the kitchen. His older sister was there and sweeping a pile of trash out the open back door into the backyard, which had trash and junk everywhere. Junk washing machines, car parts, refrigerators. The kitchen counters were stacked 2 feet deep in dirty dishes and pots and pans. The kid grabbed a dirty glass and filled it with water. I drank it and didn't die. In a corner of the kitchen was a 50-pound bag of dry dog food, open. "Oh nice, you have a dog." Her new friend grins and says, "Oh no, we don't have a dog." I thought about that for a minute and told him I'd better go home now. See ya later. After that I took a different way home after school. What was the dog food for? People. A decorative bowl on the table next to the couch absolutely filled with fingernail and toenail clippings. When I was 12, my friend asked me over for a sleepover. He lived in a pretty big house in a nice neighborhood and the family was upper middle class. Anyway, here's the weird part. They refused to feed me. The dad told me to stay upstairs while they had dinner. I was 12, so of course I didn't know what to think. He tried to be normal about it. He said, "We're gonna have dinner. Stay up here and I'll bring you something to drink. What do you want?" "We have Coke, lemonade, etc." So I stayed upstairs and drank Coke and played Nintendo. My friend didn't bat an eyelash. Apparently this was a normal thing. Later when I told him I was hungry, he acted like I was bothering him. He ended up sneaking into the kitchen and stealing a can of tuna fish and just handed it to me with no can opener. When I asked if he could open it, he said, "I don't know where the can opener is." Ended up using a butter knife. Next weird part, it was the middle of winter and they didn't use heat at all. So it was obviously freezing cold in the house. I was sleeping on the floor and all I had was a blanket. I remember telling him I couldn't go to sleep because I was so cold. He ended up waking up his dad, who came in with a pile of blankets and dropped them on the floor next to me and walked back out. I wrapped up in them the best I could, but it was still unbelievably cold. The next morning they had breakfast and I was downstairs with them, but there was nowhere for a guest to sit at the table. There were 4 of them and they were having a sit-down family breakfast while I just awkwardly paced around the living room. I would occasionally make eye contact with my friend and motioned for him to bring me some food, but he ignored me. I didn't want to say anything out loud because I thought it was against their rules or whatever. The next weird thing, they wouldn't let me use their phone. I asked the dad if I could use the phone to call my mom to come get me. He picked up the phone and asked me the number. He dialed it and spoke to my mom himself and told her I was ready to be picked up. I was only 12, but I knew I didn't want to be that kid's friend anymore. So I stopped talking to him after that. I remember the car ride home my mom stopped and got me McDonald's and I ate so fast. She was not happy about them not feeding me, but we just forgot about it and moved on. To this day I still don't know what that shit was all about. They were a very religious family, but they were Christian, and I usually had the opposite of that experience at other Christian friends' houses. I also thought maybe it had something to do with the fact that they had money and my family was poor and we lived in a bad part of town. Maybe they didn't want my broke germs on their silverware? Any other ideas? Has this ever happened to anyone else? Sounds like the dad was incredibly cheap. Didn't want to spend money feeding you, and didn't want to pay for heating. Dude doesn't spend money to keep his own family warm. You expect him to spend money feeding you. Pro tip, next time remember to bring a butter knife. Went to her house for the first time and realized that all the hung frames in her house still had the stock images in them. This reminds me of my aunt. She got a picture frame as a present from someone, and she said the family in the stock picture looked so perfect and happy she didn't have the heart to take it out. So she just had a random family in a nice frame mixed in with all her other family photos. She was hilarious. R.I.P. Aunt Pam. Thanks for sticking till the end. Please consider subscribing. Also please give a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video.